Tonight, we're reviewing the first episode of House of the Dragon. Is it a fresh renewal of a familiar world? Or is it dead on arrival due to the universal hate against its predecessor? Then we're talking about Better Call Saul and how it is arguably a better show than Breaking Bad and all of the things that make it special. And finally, I'm going to bring you up to speed on everything you need to know that happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe before watching She Hulk. This is Did Y'all See That? Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to Did Y'all See That? I am your host, Ngozi Mai, the Jingu VTuber. Thank you all for tuning into the show tonight. We've got a lot to get through, but first, the rundown. Tonight's episode is a pop your culture episode where we'll explore various relevant topics in modern media, and then we're just gonna nerd the fuck out, y'all. You'll probably notice the podcast from now on is gonna be a little bit shorter and a lot more frequently, so it's gonna be weekly from now on, and about an hour I'm gonna target under an hour every time. So it's either gonna be a pop your culture episode or a Talk Gozy to me episode. This week is Pop Your Culture. Feel free to comment away throughout the show. I cannot promise I'll be reading the chat too closely, but I will try. There will be spoilers tonight, folks, regarding specifically Better Call Saul and House of the Dragon. So if you see this image on the screen, please assume that we are talking about something that you could be spoiled on. I recommend muting by default and shooting a message in the chat asking what we're talking about before unmuting. When the image goes away, you are safe to unmute. With all that out of the way, y'all, let's get started with Pop Your Culture. Ow, you bubs, pop your culture like this. Tell me about it goes, you work that shit. Ow, you bubs, pop your culture like this. Tell me about it goes, you work that shit. All right, very exciting stuff tonight. Let's go ahead and start with our first segment tonight, in case you missed it. In this segment, I will go over the spark notes of the notable pop culture news from the past week. Let's go ahead and get started with Guillermo del Toro's new horror anthology series that was announced this week, I think this week or maybe last week, Cabinet of Curiosities. It's due to drop on Netflix this October. The series will feature 8 self-contained horror stories by 8 different directors, and each of them challenging some classic horror tropes. So think the vibes from H.P. Lovecraft and monsters and all that jazz, which is very in line with Guillermo del Toro's style. Some of the actors announced to be a part of the series are Harry Potter's Rupert Grint, The Walking Dead's Andrew Lincoln, Silicon Valley's Martin Starr, and hilariously Eric Andre. Eric Andre's up in this. The monsters are going to be leveraging the practical makeup and special effects that Guillermo del Toro is extremely famous for using in his previous works, such as Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark, Crimson Peak, and Pan's Labyrinth. I am so fucking excited for this project, y'all. I literally cannot contain it. Let's go. A new game was announced this month called Squirrel with a Gun, and it is a sandbox game where you play a cute little teeny squirrel who is strapped with a 9mm, and you can go around robbing motherfuckers and killing agents that are pursuing you. This game looks awesome. This was a very, very pleasant surprise of a game that came out. That's coming out. There is no release date yet, but I'm gonna be on the lookout for this because this looks like a good ass time, especially for streamers, y'all. Knives Out 2 was announced, known as Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Our beloved detective Benoit Blanc is on another case as a rich tech billionaire invites his closest friends to a luxury getaway on his private Greek island until someone turns up dead. Detective Blanc is on the case to find out who done it, not even including Daniel Craig, y'all. This cast is fucking stacked. You got Ed Norton, you got Janelle Monáe in here, you got Hamilton's Leslie Odom Jr., WandaVision's Catherine Hahn, Guardian of the Galaxy's Dave Bautista, Kate Hudson's up in this hoe, Moon Knight's Ethan Hawke. Yo. Cast is stacked, y'all. This is releasing on December 23rd on Netflix. Very exciting stuff. I loved the first movie, so I'm really excited to see more from this universe. Oh, the many L's taken by Warner Brothers Discovery this month, y'all. Ooh, Lord, WBD is preparing a merger with their own streaming platform, Disney Plus and HBO Max. In an effort to cut the costs in that merger and gain a whole bunch of tax write-offs, you probably have seen a lot of cancellations from movies and TV shows this month. It's because they are systematically canceling dozens of projects on the platforms, and honestly, primarily HBO Max. They're primarily the targets of this, meaning all of that canceled IP will be removed from those platforms. This affects projects such as, but not limited to, the new Gumball movie that was supposed to come out. I love Amazing World of Gumball, y'all. I'm a grown ass woman. I'm 28 years old, and I fuck with that show, bro. And they took that movie. I am pissed. There was going to be a Wonder Twins movie. There was going to be a Batgirl film, and in that film, they were going to have Michael Keaton reprise his role as Batman. Like, how the fuck do you cancel that? What the fuck? And there was even going to be, they even canceled the Snowpiercer series. That's like a wildly successful series, and they fucking canceled it. The directors of Batgirl found out about the cancellation of their movie on social media. They couldn't even be bothered to fucking send them an email. They fucking found out while they were away on one of their wedding. Like, they, come on. Like, apparently, one of the directors, Bilal Falah, was trying to salvage any footage, because the film was almost done. The film was almost complete. He was trying to salvage the footage on the WBD service, and they wiped all of it. And I actually found out today, Warner Brothers Discovery is within their right to fully delete every scrap of the existence of all of these canceled projects, so that the IRS can prove that no revenue can come from those projects, so that they can keep the tax write-offs. It's literally for money. It's so fucking disgusting. And honestly, the joke ended up being on WBD, because while they saved a measly $3 billion, okay, that's a lot of money, sure. They saved $3 billion from each cancellation. They lost upward of $20 billion to their market cap, and their stock price fucking plummeted. So as a result, there was a new development today. They lost so much fucking money that now they can't even afford to put on the movies that they did keep. There were like multiple movies that were supposed to come out this year, including Black Adam, Don't Worry Darling, Shazam 2, Aquaman's supposed to come out early next year, and the only ones they can put out are Don't Worry Darling and Black Adam. Those are the only two movies that they can afford to put out this year. So everything else has been postponed as far as a year from now. So it is just like, they totally fucked this up. And it really sucks, because the filmmakers and the actors and all of the people that put all their work into these projects are the ones that are suffering for it the most. So Warner Brothers Discovery is on my fucking shit list right now, and they should be on yours too. Oh my goodness, a Community movie is happening. 6 seasons and a movie confirmed. According to creator Dan Harmon, the Community movie is now a matter of when and not if. The outline of the film is there, and many of the former castmates, such as Alison Brie, Joel McHale, Danny Pudi, a lot of them have expressed interest in reprising their roles. So like, this shit's happening, and it's really exciting. I don't know about Donald Glover. He kind of seems like he's on his own shit right now. So don't know if we're gonna see Troy come back, but I mean, I'm happy about it. That said, Dan also stated that it can be anywhere between 1 and 8 years before we see this movie happen. So don't hold your breath, but it is coming, folks. The Devil Wears Prada is coming to the stage. This show is a stage musical that is currently amidst Broadway tryouts in Chicago. Unfortunately, I have heard some unsavory reviews thus far, criticizing the lackluster score from Elton John, which is shocking. It's Elton John. Like, wow. An underdeveloped and bland characters and odd costume choices given the source material. Like, it's a fashion magazine, and yet the costumes are like a little bit dated and kind of like not trendy at all. And a general lack of direction for the entirety of the production, because they're wanting the production to be set in 2022. But the source material is from 20 years ago, and they're not updating any of it. So it's not really connecting. Mainly, a lot of the criticism is the show falling into the hole of what's known as a quote unquote moneymaker musical, which is pretty much a mediocre show that's usually an adaptation of like a really popular movie that is only put on Broadway to sell to tourists, because it will sell to tourists. Like other shows like this were Pretty Woman, Mrs. Doubtfire, shows that had very talented actors in it. The show itself, kind of shitty, but it sold like a motherfucker on Broadway, because people were like, oh, I want to go see Miss In lighter news, some reviews have praised things like the set design, loyalty to the source material, and particularly the performance of the titular character Miranda Priestley, who is played by Beth Leavel, who is apparently killing that motherfucker role. So if this show makes it to Broadway, I will definitely be seeing it. TwitchCon 2022 is coming this October, and it has generated a bit of controversy amongst the content creator community. For one, the ticket price is $230, which is pretty fucking steep, especially considering that is around the same price as San Diego Comic-Con International, which has been around for decades. So kind of a bold move there, Twitch, for charging that much, but we'll see. We'll see where the money's going. Another update for this year's TwitchCon is they've eliminated +1s to the partner level only party. For those that don't know, TwitchCon historically has thrown a huge party for all of the partners on Twitch. Unfortunately, the number of partners on Twitch, or maybe fortunately, has grown a lot, like tripled since the beginning of the pandemic. As a result, there's too many of them, so they can't really allow them to have +1. So that sucks a little bit, but I'm sure it'll still be a good time. Finally, in arguably the most controversial bit, they initially came out with some unsavory health policies by not enforcing masks being worn indoors or proof of COVID-19 vaccinations, which this was met with a major backlash due to other larger cons having much safer policies. So many content creators refused to attend out of safety concerns. The streaming giant swiftly walked back on this announcement after some time, later reinforcing mask usage indoors as well as proof of vaccination. While many content creators rejoiced at this news, the anti-maskers of the bunch revealed themselves, and many pledged not to attend in protest. Most notably to me, the Call of Duty turned Apex Legends streamer Nick Merckx went as far as dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on a giant party of his own that's going to be happening at the same time in San Diego as well, boasting that there's no masks required. So a little petty, but I give you props for the dedication, Nick Merckx. I guess you can't please everybody. HBO's The Last of Us finally got a mini trailer this month, showing some familiar scenes to fans of the game, including Joel running from zombies with an utterly terrified Sarah in his arms. Ooh, man, we know what happens to Sarah. It's so sad. A shot of Bill removing his mask, presumably recognizing Joel, Bill being played by the one and only Nick Offerman. And finally, the word-for-word shot of Joel telling Ellie, "You have no idea what loss is." Oh my goodness, chills. I'm so excited for that show. Not to mention the highly anticipated remaster of the original game, where they updated the textures and the lighting and the graphics and gave it a whole facelift. It's coming in early September, so the hype is really fucking high for The Last of Us right now. Very exciting. And finally, much to my surprise, the poster of the final season of Atlanta was revealed today. And y'all, the hype is real. It is actually super wild that we just got season 3 for Atlanta only a few months ago, and now we're already getting the 4th and final season in only a few weeks. COVID really fucked up a lot of shows' plans, y'all, like Outlander and Good Girls. So many shows got totally fucked by this, and I'm sure Atlanta did too, and that's the reason why we got it so late. I'm sure Atlanta season 3 was supposed to come out back in like 2020, but COVID, but cards on the table, y'all. I actually fell off hard on early on in season 3, so I actually haven't even finished it myself, but I will certainly be binging it in the weeks leading up to the final season. The first season is out, or the first episode of the final season is out on September 15th on FX. And that, folks, is In Case You Missed It. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment, Do We Stan It? In this segment, we take a closer look at a show or a TV show that is new, and we want to see, is it worth the hype? Do we stand this shit? And this month is House of the Dragon. I'm gonna throw a fat ass spoiler, y'all. We are talking about the first episode of House of the Dragon. If you have not seen that episode, mute this bitch right now because I'm about to talk about it. Holy shit. This is fucking hype. Anybody fans of Game of Thrones, either you're really hyped about this or you're not. We all know how Game of Thrones ended. It was lackluster, and that's a very kind way to put it. So I personally was pretty nervous about this show, thinking that it was gonna kind of have a lot of that stink, that bad juju that came with with its predecessor. But quite frankly, I was very pleasantly surprised. Let's fucking get right into it. For starters, there are fresh, new characters, brand new faces. We're not seeing any actors from the original series, although there is actually a rumor that we might see one. I'll get to that later. But yeah, it's basically set around 200 years prior to the fall of the Mad King, who is Daenerys' father, and the end of the Targaryen reign. So this is kind of at the height of the Targaryen reign where this show takes place. We follow King Viserys, who is pictured here, as well as his daughter, heiress Rhaenyra, and his ambitious brother Daemon, among other characters. It's a whole new cast, y'all. So that alone already gives it the freshness, like knowing that it's just going to be a totally different story. Not only that, it's also a set story. Like a lot of the beef with Game of Thrones was that by around season 4, the writers had actually already caught up to the books that George R. R. Martin had released. As a result, they were kind of having to make shit up, and they were not, apparently, this is news to me, but apparently they were not involving George R. R. Martin as much as we thought they were. Like, he kind of gave them the broad strokes of how he envisioned the series, the storylines closing, and they just kind of took it away. And that's kind of the reason why the last 4 seasons of Game of Thrones kind of felt a little doo-doo. Like, they had moments that we were all like, oh, shit. But for the most part, the writing quality really kind of steeply declined after season 4. The great part about House of the Dragon is that this is in the past. This is a end-to-end story. George R. R. Martin already finished this story. The writers cannot possibly fuck it up if they tried. And honestly, I have a lot more confidence in these writers anyway, so... Some of the familiar things we see, King's Landing is back. We see King's Landing, which is really, really cool, especially because it's not burned down yet. We also see the rest of Westeros, although, interestingly enough, I don't think Essos appears yet. I think that this is long before Essos and Westeros make contact, which is interesting. They mention Essos very briefly in the beginning of the episode, saying there's this big nation across the water and they think they're going to be a problem in the future. So that was very interesting too. We see a lot of familiar names. We see the likes of House Stark, House Arryn, House Lannister, and many of the other familiar noble families. Like there's folks from Dorne, there's folks from the Riverlands. Like it's really exciting. Another really cool thing is that the Game of Thrones is very much still at play. Even though this is a totally new story with totally new characters and a lot of fresh faces, it's still a lot of the same conniving, backstabbing shit that we loved about Game of Thrones. So all in all, this feels like a reboot to me. This just feels like a refresh on Game of Thrones, and I'm fucking hyped for it. Starting off strong with powerful female leads. As pictured here, you see our, protagonist. I'm not really sure if we can call her the main protagonist, like because it's like an ensemble of ensemble cast. But this is Rhaenyra, and she is proclaimed the heiress of the throne, much to many people's disdain because she's a woman, and women can't rule. Women can't be a queen. Come on now, that's just no. She exudes boss ass bitch vibes. She exudes Daenerys vibes, y'all, and we are on episode 1. It's looking like it's going to be a major theme of the show for strong female leaders to be challenging the patriarchal norm in pursuit of power. And that energy is not only coming from Rhaenyra, who's pictured here, another character named Lady Alicent Hightower, who I believe is Rhaenyra's like maiden. You know, like I guess like royal women have like a right-hand maiden that are just like their bestie or something like that. I ain't royal, I don't know. But that's kind of her role. And her father is actually the Hand of the King. His name is Otto Hightower. And he sucks. Her father is extremely misogynistic and is actively, shamelessly trying to prostitute her to the king. After the king loses his wife under some suspect circumstances, Otto Hightower is just like, I want my daughter to fuck you. And he like tries to get her to like get all up in her. She will marry him eventually. That will happen actually in the next couple of episodes. I looked on the Wikipedia. I told y'all the story is already done. So like be careful looking up like characters on the internet because like you're gonna get spoiled. Because I got a little bit spoiled, but she does end up marrying the king. I think we actually find that out in the next episode. And I don't think she's gonna be letting her father treat her like that once she's queen. Do y'all think so? Yeah, me neither. You also have another princess who is an older princess named Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who was once considered to be the heiress of the throne herself, but the crown was given to her cousin Viserys instead. It was the idea was that the succession was unclear for the king at the time because he didn't have a male heir. So it was between Rhaenys and his daughter and her cousin Viserys, and they eventually just gave it to her cousin because, again, women can't rule. Anyway, it kind of gave her this nickname across the realm as the queen who never was. That said, what your girl lost in a crown, she did not lose in influence because she married Lord Corlys Velaryon of House Velaryon, who is might as well be about as noble as the House Targaryen. For one, that is the house that Targaryens marry. Like, they are also white-haired folks that like are the like premier blood to marry into. So very, very powerful, very powerful allies to have in the House Velaryon. So I think that Rhaenys and Corlys are going to be making some big ass waves in the House of the Dragon. The girl power is fucking strong, y'all. Love it. It's also really refreshing to see that the writers made this bold choice of canonicizing a very high standing house as black. The Velaryon, they're all black, y'all. The House Velaryon is black. I was so happy to see that. I kind of, because we saw Corlys in like the promos and stuff. So I was like, okay, it's nice that they like got like a black guy to like round out the cast and like be a little bit more diverse. No, they made a bold statement, y'all. A whole noble house is black. The Velaryons are canonically black. To say the original Game of Thrones had a diversity problem is a severe understatement, because all the black folks they did have were either evil, conniving, money, like only wanted money, or they were eventually fucking killed. I'm still mad about Missandei. I'm still mad about her. I'm just saying. So it seems that House of the Dragon is making a very bold statement here that black faces in high places is going to be very much a thing in the series, and I am fucking here for it. Let's go. More dragons. So we are still in a post-Balerion world. If you remember who Balerion is, that is that we saw the skull of Balerion in the Game of Thrones, and we actually see it again in House of the Dragon. He is the biggest dragon to have ever lived. At this point, he has died of old age. So the dragons aren't like, if you recall in the original series, the reason why the dragons died out is because I think inbreeding made it so their genes made them smaller and smaller and smaller until they couldn't even survive. They weren't even able to come out of the eggs anymore. At this point, the dragons are still very much in strength. These dragons are also huge. So yeah, it sounds like we're gonna have something like 10 different dragons to see in this series, which is really exciting. Pictured here is Caraxes, who is Rhaenyra's dragon. And believe it or not, Caraxes is one of the smaller ones. He's one of the smaller ones, which is crazy. I saw a graphic. It was a really cool graphic that was comparing Daenerys' dragons to like the ones that are going to be shown in the show. And oh my God, Drogon. Y'all remember how big Drogon won? He is a pipsqueak. He's so tiny compared to these other dragons. It's like on the order of a human compared to a chihuahua. Like, that's how small, maybe even smaller than that. Maybe like a human compared to like a gerbil. If you make Balerion the human and Drogon is the gerbil, like, it's ridiculous how much smaller the dragons get like later in the series. So these dragons are big. I'm really excited to see more dragons. It's also really interesting to see that the Targaryens, when they were in power, what we saw in Game of Thrones was Daenerys kind of being the underdog, working against all odds to reclaim her crown. Whereas now we're seeing the Targaryens in the height of their power, and you know what? They're not much special. They're not very special. They're not much different from anybody else. They always have this delusion of grandeur that they have some divine right to this crown. The Targaryens are better than everyone else, and we have the right to rule. But the show really lands home. They only got this crown because they had dragons. If House Stark suddenly had dragons, they would have had the crown, And it's really, really cool them like kind of pointing out that hypocrisy. Even Daemon himself points out that hypocrisy, which I hate because it kind of makes me like him a little bit. Like the fact that he's kind of like doing a little middle finger into the face of that in that hypocrisy, but he's also a really bad person, so I don't really want to like him either. But yeah, we observe in the show that they're no better or worse than Queen Cersei and King Robert Baratheon. They just had dragons. The new writers, Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal, are attached. Totally disjoint from the Game of Thrones writer. So there's no lingering stink here. Dave Benioff and Dan Wives are nowhere near this fucking project, and let's all have a big hallelujah for that. I'm sorry. No, I want to say no shade on them, but I give them shade. Man. They deserve the fucking shade. Not to mention George R.R. Martin is very much involved in the writing here, which apparently wasn't a thing in Game of Thrones. So the source material is also a complete story. So the idea, there's just no opportunity for the writers to fuck this up. So I'm really fucking excited for this show. Verdict. I am damned excited for this show. That first episode hyped me the fuck up. Any fear I had that was lingering from Game of Thrones is fucking gone right now. I will be tuning in every Sunday to watch this. Do we stand it, y'all? Yes, we stand it. And that, folks, is Do We Stand It? Hello, folks. If you like what you're hearing or what you're watching, then please check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/gozimai. That's GOZIMAI, where you'll catch me playing video games, cracking dumbass jokes, and having a good ass time. I post my schedule every Monday on Twitter, so please come and say hi. And now back to the show. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment tonight, Gozy Zooms In. In this segment, I will take a show or TV show or a movie or game, some piece of pop culture, and we're going to analyze the fuck out of it. And the show that we are going to watch or to talk about is Better Call Saul, guys. Oh my God. Spoiler alert. I'm leaving spoiler alert on. We are talking about the show. The show just ended last week. It was a great ending. I love this show. I kind of binged the entire thing in the past few months, and we got some things to say about it, y'all. Let's get started. Let's talk about the themes of this show. Why, I guess the biggest thesis that I have here is why this show is better than Breaking Bad. People consider Breaking Bad one of the greatest pieces of TV entertainment in the history. Like it's one of the greatest. And it really is. It's incredible. It's an incredible piece of art. It is well thought out from beginning to end. It's satisfying. It's exciting. It is a really good show. I think Better Call Saul is better. I think it's better because it has pretty much all of the best parts of Breaking Bad, but it also had heart. It had heart. Love is a really, really consistent theme throughout the show, and even lack thereof. You know, one-sided love, undying love, ride or die love. Like it comes to it, like love for a parent, love for a partner, love for a brother, love for a colleague. Like it is consistent throughout the entire show, and it makes you feel you care about the fucking characters. And I think that just makes all the difference. That makes all the fucking difference. Forgiveness is another theme, and the having the capacity to forgive, and with that comes pride. Pride and forgiveness kind of go hand in hand because there's a lot of strife, particularly between the titular character, Saul Goodman, aka Jimmy McGill, and his brother Chuck. They have a very strained relationship, and both of them are too proud to forgive each other. Both of them have done really shitty things to each other, and they don't want to forgive each other. And every time one tries to reach out the olive branch, the other one's pride gets in the way. They're never in sync. And it's really kind of tragic. That entire storyline is really kind of tragic. Another theme is regret. There's a lot of regret that happens throughout the entire. In fact, regret kind of drives Jimmy. It drives him with every thing that happens in his life, where he takes on these schemes and these agendas and these operations to make him more money. When they go awry, he's just sitting there left with his regret. Even at the end of the show, up to the last minute of the show, the last 10 minutes of the show is the first time he lets go of the regret and accepts it instead of running from it. It's really kind of incredible. Another one is gray morality. Nothing is black and white, and this show really hammers that home, right? Especially Jimmy. Like his whole thing is that when you see him as Saul Goodman, the lawyer in Breaking Bad, we find out that's Jimmy at the lowest point of his life. When when all his entire former life of Jimmy McGill is just all of the things he regrets in life, and he runs from it, and that's when he becomes Saul Goodman, and that's what we see throughout the entirety of Breaking Bad. Whereas in Better Call Saul, we see Jimmy. We follow Jimmy, you know, and what makes Jimmy's character so interesting is that he wants to be a good person, but he also likes the game. He likes playing the game. He's good at it, you know, and he wants to keep doing it, and he always tiptoes just close to the line without crossing it. Close enough to make people uncomfortable. Close enough to make people say, "Oh my God, no, you're a bad lawyer." But no, he's actually a really good lawyer. You know, it's really, really fascinating. Some other themes: loss, desperation, acceptance. Like there's a lot of very complex, emotionally driven themes in this show, and I think that really sets it apart from Breaking Bad. Let's talk about Jimmy McGill. He's a con artist on the surface, but indulges in it not because it's just what he does. He does it because he's good at it, you know? It's something he's good at. Think about things you're good at, guys. You like doing them. You don't want to keep doing things you're bad at. You don't want to keep fitting the mold of someone else. You want to be yourself. And who he is somebody that loves playing the game, you know? Even though he knows he probably should get out while he still can, he just loves the game. He gets immense gratification when he gets away with it. He's naturally likable, Jimmy is, and much to some characters' annoyance. He was even his mother's favorite, which more on that later. He loves his brother Chuck unconditionally, and so basically his brother Chuck has an ailment that is presents itself as a mental ailment. Chuck believes it's a physical ailment, and Jimmy believes him. Despite everybody else, even doctors saying no, it's mental, Jimmy says, fuck you. He says it's physical, it's physical. Jimmy loves his fucking brother, you know. And he only wavers in his love for his brother when he finds out that his brother has been actively sabotaging his advancement as a lawyer for years, and that his brother literally never supported him. That is when it breaks for him. And finally seeing that resentment for his brother it just kind of broke the relationship, which was really tragic. He loves Kim. We're going to talk about these characters a little more in a couple minutes. He loves Kim so much, and he doesn't want to lose her. And he thinks she'll leave if he knew all the shading dealings he did, so he lies to her. But then he realized she loves him back. The true ride or die. Kim Wexler is the true ride or die, y'all. And when he learns that, you know, he never lies to her again. He pledges to never lie to her again. And I think it's really beautiful. We'll talk about Kim a little bit more later. He's always looking for opportunity, not necessarily for even money, but rather to just achieve his perception of success. His flashy suits, you know, his expensive, was it Chocobolo desk or some shit like that? It was like a fucking expensive ass desk that was like $8,000. Actually, looking it up, it's like $8,000, $8,000 for a desk. But that's success for him. That's his perception of success. Having a nice car, a fancy law office, you know, even the name Saul Goodman feels more successful to him than Jimmy McGill, you know. He does eventually do the right thing. That's the thing about Jimmy. He's a good person. We didn't see Saul Goodman as a good person in Breaking Bad. Jimmy McGill is a good person, and he does do the right thing eventually, you know. And he'll consign to being viewed as the bad guy to make that happen, to do the bad thing. Because like I said, he does shady shit. He rides close to the line. You know, he does stuff that are just like, it's morally ambiguous, but it's not necessarily breaking the law. And when it comes time to do the right thing, he owns up to it, man. He does not try to blame someone else. He doesn't try to flame someone else. He owns the fuck up to it, dog. You know? He cares about what people close to him think of him. He doesn't really care about what society thinks of him. He cares about what the people he loves the most think of them. And as long as they love him and respect him for doing the right thing, he's okay with it, even if everyone else hates him for it. He crumbles when he loses, whether it's money or people in his life. Like I said, he gets immense gratification from when he gets away with it. But when he loses, he gets desperate. The desperation, I mentioned, that's a theme. That's a theme that comes around. Whenever he loses, he inches closer and closer to Saul Goodman. He goes farther and farther away from Jimmy McGill until he's lost everything. And that's when he fully becomes Saul Goodman, because he has nothing more to lose. Jimmy's amazing. That was only the tip of the iceberg. Watch the show, y'all. The show is extremely character-driven. Every single character is complex, connected, flawed, and likable. That is a huge improvement over Breaking Bad, because quite frankly, most of the characters in Breaking Bad fucking sucked. The only ones that were likable were Mike, and that was like kinda, Gus, kinda, and fucking Jesse. Nobody liked Walt. Walt sucked. We were so happy when Walt died, man. Hank was honestly kind of annoying. He was funny and likable, but he was also kind of fucking annoying. Like, everybody hated Skyler. Everybody hated Skyler and their fucking son. Like, everybody was so fucking hateable in that show. This show, you like every single character in the show, even the shitty ones. Even the characters doing really shitty things, you like them still because you get complexity and backstory and depth in those characters. And a really cool thing about this show, they really could have I'm not gonna lie, Better Call Saul definitely tickled the fan service a little bit, especially toward the end. There, bringing in cameos from Breaking Bad. They don't do that often. They don't do that often. In fact, I would say like 95% of the okay, maybe like 85% of the show, 80% of the show is focused on new characters, you know, and not just the characters that were also in Breaking Bad. The ones that are also in Breaking Bad feel like supporting characters for me. They feel like they're supporting in service of the new characters. And I thought that was a masterful way to handle it because they really could have just ridden on that fan service, excuse me, and did the bare minimum. And they really didn't. Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould really fucking hit it out of the park, y'all. Let's talk about Kim. This is Kim Wexler, Jimmy's lovey love. She is loyal. Holy shit. These hoes is loyal. They are loyal. If you've ever heard the term ride or die, bitch, you don't know what it means because Kim Wexler is that. She is the most loyal woman that a man could ask for. She is smart as hell. She is capable and she is a good person and she believes in being a good person. She believes there's merit in that. I think Jimmy kind of doesn't see the point in acting like a good person in service of people that don't deserve it. Whereas Kim thinks everybody deserves a good person, a good advocate, a good lawyer. You know, because she's a good person, she's actually unable to live a full life without doing the right thing. Like when she tries to do the bad thing and she knows it's bad and she knows she's hurting people, she lives miserably. And it's almost like she's punishing herself. It's almost like she's forcing herself to not be happy because she doesn't feel like she deserves happiness because she did that horrible thing to that other person. But once she does the right thing, that is the only time she feels like she can exhale. She loves Jimmy for who he is, no matter what he does. And he does some shit, God. Oh my God, Jimmy does some stupid shit. And she'll just sit here like, okay, I still love you. Okay. You know, that's literally what she says. She says, tell me. He tells her. She's just like, okay. She never wants to change him. She has no desire to change him. She loves him. Sorry about that. She loves him for everything everything he is. She feels alive with Jimmy, you know, even when it's not good for others. And she does realize this later in the series that when they're together and when they indulge in, I guess you could say, the worst parts of each other, they do damage to people's lives. They do damage people's lives. And she recognized that. And Jimmy didn't give a fuck. He was just like, okay, who cares? Who cares about them? We're the ones that matter. Because remember, Jimmy's sense of right and wrong are based on what the people he loves perceives as right or wrong, right? He doesn't give a fuck about what society thinks is right or wrong. He cares what Kim thinks, you know? Whereas Kim thinks about the society. She thinks about the greater good. You know, there's a really powerful scene, and it's the last scene we see of Jimmy McGill until the last episode, until he becomes until he goes from Saul Goodman back to Jimmy. It is when she says, I love you. No, sorry. Jimmy said, I love you, Kim. Kim says, I love you too, but so what? And she leaves. Because even though she loves him so much, it's better for everybody that they care about if they just aren't together. And she accepts that. And that's the moment that broke Jimmy McGill. It is a really impactful moment. It's extremely, extremely profound moment. She's Jimmy's North Star. She's his moral compass. He determines what the right thing to do is through the lens of, would Kim be okay with me doing this? What would Kim do? Kim is a really important character. Let's talk about Chuck. This is Chuck McGill. This is Jimmy's brother. Saul Goodman had a brother, y'all. He had a fucking brother. He sees Jimmy as Saul from as early as childhood. Remember, Jimmy is good person Jimmy that really does eventually do the right thing, that has love for people, that has things to lose. Saul Goodman is someone that doesn't have anything to lose, that just does bad things for his own self-gain because he doesn't have anybody. His moral compass is gone, you know? Unfortunately, Chuck sees Jimmy as Saul his whole life, you know? And he kind of got this mindset on Jimmy because their mother and father coddled Jimmy. I remember, like I told you guys, Jimmy is naturally likable. Everybody likes Jimmy, you know? And Chuck resented that. He really fucking resented that, you know? So even when Jimmy was doing his con shit, his parents would just be like, "Oh, it's okay. He's Jimmy. Jimmy's so sweet." Whereas Chuck would just become more and more bitter about him. You know, he resents the shit out of Jimmy his entire life. Chuck worked his ass off. Chuck is an esteemed lawyer, a partner of a firm with his name on it, and he worked his fucking ass off. He became extremely highly respected. He dedicated his life to upholding the law. He founded that highly lucrative law firm. He should be happy, but he isn't when he sees Jimmy succeed too. You see, in his eyes, success comes so easy to Jimmy. Being likable comes so easy to him. Chuck resents that because why is it that I had to work so fucking hard for what I got and he just gets it easily and he gets the same praise? That's not right in Chuck's view. That's how Chuck thinks. Everybody likes Jimmy and it's so effortless for him to be liked, you know? He doesn't feel like Jimmy deserves any measure of success that Chuck has built for himself. It's like if anything good happens to Jimmy, it actively hurts Chuck to some extent physically. So Chuck has a mental disorder where he believes that he is allergic to electricity, that he has a physical allergy to electricity, that it like burns him to be near electricity. That is clearly a mental disorder, but he believes it to be physical. That we find out in the show that was triggered by Jimmy passing the bar and becoming a lawyer. The fact that Jimmy, slipping Jimmy, Saul Jimmy, you know, Jimmy's the fuck up, right? The fact that Jimmy went through it, when he went through the years of schooling and he fucking worked his ass off too to become a lawyer. The fact that Jimmy is now upholding the same law he does triggered him into developing a mental disorder that, you know, that he believes is physical. He really does love his brother, guys. I'm making him out to sound like a total fucking dick, and he kind of is, don't get me wrong. He really does love his brother in the familial sense, but he believes that Jimmy is not a good person and that he needs to remain in the gutter. You know, that Jimmy should not be in any sort of authority stance when it comes to the law. Chuck is not a bad person. He's flawed and he's in pain, you know. Due to the pride that both he and Jimmy have, they actually are never even able to resolve their issues and be brothers. And instead, they just hurt the other person more and more each time until it's too late. Let's talk about Nacho. Nacho, aka Ignacio. This is a new character, y'all. He is an ambitious cartel lackey turned trusted top member of the Eladio Mexican drug cartel. He has a constant struggle of wanting to get out of the game and then going to extraordinary lengths to eliminate the threats that are keeping him in the game. And then he decides he wants to stay and fill the power vacuum that he just created now that the threat is gone. It's kind of a cycle of this with Nacho. He wants to leave because he feels danger. His life is being threatened. He gets rid of the threat, but now he could leave, but then he's like, but I could get more power. And then he stays. That's kind of like Ignacio's arc throughout the entire show. He's extremely smart. Holy shit, this guy's smart. He's extremely resourceful. He's very adept at navigating extremely and increasingly desperate situations. Even with all of the power and money he amasses as he rises the ranks, he seems to always remain under someone else's control, whether it's Tuco Salamanca, Hector Salamanca, Mike, Gus Fring, and later Lalo. You know, we'll get to Lalo shortly. He is constantly having to navigate lie after lie after lie and stay ahead of everyone else in order to stay alive. A life of constantly looking over his shoulder. In the end, he says his piece and he gives a final fuck you to every single one of those fucks that put him under a thumb. Every time he would eliminate another threat, he would be under someone else's thumb. He fucking said fuck you to every single one of them and he went out on his own terms. That was a really memorable scene too, right? Y'all, like, oh my God, I watched it like 4 times. He is a really good actor. Oh my God, this is Michael Mando. He's a really good actor. You may have seen him also in Far Cry 3 as Voss. He rocks. Let's talk about Lalo. The character born from a single throwaway line in Breaking Bad. That line birthed the entire concept of Better Call Saul as its own spin-off series. Basically, if you don't remember, the very first time Saul meets Walt and Jesse, they kidnap him and bring him in the middle of the desert, put a bag over his head, and he's fucking scared. He actually thinks it's Lalo that took him. So he says, no, don't, no, what did he say? He said something like, oh, no, it wasn't me. It was Ignacio. That was another character that also was birthed from that line. Ignacio was birthed from that line. And then after that, he said, didn't Lalo send you? Those two characters birthed from a single, like, little, like, interaction in that entire show that was thrown away. They were never mentioned again. And that is the birth of Lalo and Ignacio. Lalo is a mysterious character, y'all. He is, I think, a secret agent. They never even fucking, like, explain this. I think he's like a secret fucking guerrilla agent because he does like these insane things. Like, there was one scene where he's like trying to get information from like a travel agent guy. And the travel agent guy is just like, no, I'm not going to tell you that information. And he's like walled off in an office. So then the travel agent guy looks away and looks back. Fucking Lalo's gone. Turns out he fucking jumped into the ceiling silently, and then he fucking crawled over inside of the office and just kills the guy. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that was such a random fucking thing to witness. Like, it was just so fucking weird. Not only that, he also, like, but there was like a Gus like sent like a murder hit squad, a squad of trained fucking military assassins to his compound in Mexico to fucking kill him in the middle of the night. He killed all of them. It was incredible. I couldn't believe it. And not only that, he also faked his death so that he could like go on this huge investigation to uncover Gus Fring's meth lab operate. Like, this guy has to be like a special agent. They never explain this, by the way, where he got this expertise. He's just like a fucking badass for some fucking reason. Also, Tony Dalton killed the role. He's awesome. He's very charming. Oh my gosh. He kills anybody he deems that are in his way with zero hesitation. Like, he will just like, and he'll do it with a smile on his face. He'll be like, hey, how you doing? Pop. He just killed him. Like, he does that shit. And he is fiercely loyal to the Salamanca family because he's also he's also a Salamanca himself. He fucking hates Gus's guts. He spends a lot of the series actually trying to figure out what Gus is up to and how to expose him to Eladio. He actually intertwines with Jimmy in a really explosive way in seasons 5 and 6. Season 5 and 6 are like really fucking good, arguably some of the best of the series. And it really kind of kicks the tension and excitement of the rest of the show way up into high gear. So Lalo, insanely good character. Mike. So another thing about Better Call Saul is that it gives new meaning to a lot of many beloved characters and moments in Breaking Bad. I really recommend folks, if you've never seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, try watching Better Call Saul first. I think that's going to make your viewing experience for Breaking Bad like a lot fucking more cool. Like, I think that would be really cool. I'm really curious if anybody tries that. I'm really curious what your experience is, because like I can only imagine like it's only going to enhance your experience for Breaking Bad if you watch Better Call Saul first. For Mike, we get to see more of Mike's past in Better Call Saul, looking deeper into why he sends money for the care of his granddaughter, Kaylee. We find out that his son, Matty, worked for the same police department that Mike did because Matty looked up to his dad so much. He just wanted to be just like him his whole life. Unfortunately, that police department was corrupt as fuck, and Mike included was also one of the corrupt cops, and it broke Matty's heart when he found that out. It broke his heart that he found out his dad was a dirty cop. Matty was a good cop, and he refused to become dirty and follow. And the other cops murdered him for it because they thought he would narc on them. That haunts Mike so profoundly throughout the entire series. I don't even remember if they even mentioned this once in Breaking Bad, or if they did, they didn't go too deep into it because it really shows a lot why Mike is the way he is. Like his deadpan like attitude, and he's very serious and systematic all the time with everything he does. And it makes it so that he dedicates everything he does, every move he makes, every fucking job he takes with Gus and Jimmy and all them, every cent he makes is in service of ensuring Kaylee grows up to be a good person like her dad, like Matty. We also get to see how Mike is introduced to at all, we find out how he's introduced and employed eventually by Gus, as well as why Mike and Saul have such an active professional relationship. It's actually super fucking cute early on in the series with Mike and Saul getting into shenanigans and Jimmy getting into shenanigans. They're actually very close, which is actually pretty cute, I think. Gus, we see a lot more of Gus's preparation. You know, I feel like Breaking Bad went deeper into the emotional side of Gus, of why he is the way he is. So we didn't really need to see that again for Better Call Saul. throughout the entirety of Better Call Saul, Gus is he's preparing and for his dream of the mother of all meth labs, right? Which we see completed and operational in Breaking Bad. He's building it in Better Call Saul. You know, and much of his navigating politics with the Eladio cartel and kissing a lot of asses, including that of who he reports to, who is Don Bolsa, who he knows that these people will never make them one of him, and that's the reason why he's trying to make his own empire with his mother of all meth. He's trying to make his own meth empire, and he's keeping it secret from the cartel. We also get to see how his rivalry with Hector Salamanca began and why Hector hates him so fucking much. Hector fucking hates his ass, and it's kind of for good reason, because Gus clowned the shit out of Hector the entire series, so he really made him out to be a bitch. So I'm like really not surprised Hector hates him so much. The cartel storyline throughout the show was actually super rich and interesting, and it was weird. It was totally separate from Jimmy's storyline. There was effectively two simultaneous stories occurring for the entire series, and they intertwined here and there. They kind of smashed together toward the end in season 5 and halfway through season 6. But it's really kind of interesting that they had like two entire fleshed out, rich, character driven stories happening in parallel. You know, I'd say around 40-ish% of the entire series was all about the drug cartel, with the likes of Mike and Nacho and the Salamancas and Eladio's cartel. It didn't feel out of place either. You know, every time they would switch to it, it didn't feel that like, you didn't get whiplash, right? You know? And honestly, sometimes it was even more engrossing than Jimmy's story. Like, we love Jimmy and we love his story, but like the crazy shit happened in the cartel, I'm like, oh my God. Like, there were times where I was just like, I'll give a fuck about Jimmy. Go back to the cartel. Hilariously, Jimmy only deals with the cartel a few times prior to Lalo's introduction. Like, from seasons 1 through 4, like it's only a couple times that he like deals with them at all. But the cartel is heavily featured. It's still a heavily featured storyline throughout the show. Yeah. The show rewards viewers that pay attention. And you know, this is something that is the same, I think, with Breaking Bad. Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould are very meticulous and detailed people. They're very, very meticulous artists, and they put details very intentionally in the show. And if you're not paying attention, you'll probably still love the show. But if you're a person that does pay attention, you just get rewarded. You're just like, oh, you just get those chills, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, layers. There's so many layers to this. It's really, really cool how much care and thought they put into this thing. Yeah, what's pictured here, and they actually they have heavy users of foreshadowing and flashbacks and references to early moments. Pictured here is a moment. It's a screenshot from the very last episode, where Jimmy is in court and he is facing charges brought upon him from his involvement in the events of Breaking Bad. Jimmy brings up his brother, Chuck, in the monologue, and the camera suddenly focuses on this exit sign buzzing. You see, it says sign buzzing. This is a direct callback from an episode back in season 3 where his brother was on the stand testifying against Jimmy. When Jimmy, like he basically accused Jimmy of doing something, and Jimmy was at risk of losing his lawyer license. So Chuck was protesting against him, and that moment was the lowest point of Chuck's life because he lost. Jimmy beat him. I'm not going to tell you how he did it because it's really rad. Go watch the show. But Jimmy beat him, and it was humiliating. It utterly humiliated Charles, and it kind of started his decline. Which eventually ended in his suicide. So that was a very profound moment in season 3 that got called back. And it's pretty fast. They only lingered on the shot for about a second or two. But if you paid attention, you were like, wow. Like it really like just put emphasis on the moment. And these kind of moments are scattered throughout the entire series. Like the show really rewards people that pay attention to the details. There's also callback, again, with the details. There's a lot of callbacks to old gags throughout the show. Like they have a lot of running jokes that they go with, you know, with like this camera crew. They come back over and over and over again. Every time Jimmy needs to do something for some scheme, he keeps calling this group of community college kids to come fucking be his little camera crew. There's also like there's a family called the Kettlemans that are prominent in season 1, and then they come back in the last season. Like they are real. There's also Victor and Giselle, which are Kim and Jimmy's alter egos that they do. Like they're very, like I said, they really reward those attentions to details. And in these cases, they're a little bit more funny. Like they're less like to emphasize a moment and more to just be a running joke, which I think is really fucking rad. The ending was extremely satisfying. I know some people are maybe mixed about it. I'm not going to tell you what the ending was. At least I won't go into details about it, but I thought it was extremely satisfying. Basically, Jimmy ran from his regrets and became Saul Goodman. The events of Breaking Bad happened. After Breaking Bad, we come up in Better Call Saul again. It takes place both before and after. And Jimmy is tired of running. No more running. And not even for the sake of what's right in society. Remember what I told you, Jimmy's moral compass is not in line with society's moral compass. His moral compass is in Kim. It's being able to look Kim in the eye. We get closure on the ending events of Breaking Bad with Marie, Hank's wife. And it even teased, some of Jimmy's trademark clever lawyering. He was able to kind of finesse them down to I think they said he was supposed to serve 5 life sentences or some shit like that. He finessed them down to 7 years. He could have gotten out in 7 years. But he chose Kim because if he would have done that, Kim would have never respected him. She would have never talked to him again. So he manipulated the system so that Kim would be at the hearing where they were supposed to confirm that 7 years, and he confessed everything. He finally accepted what he did. He accepted his regret. He processed it, and he earned her respect again. And in that moment, Saul Goodman was dead, and he became Jimmy McGill again. He's going to do his time in prison, and all he cares about is that he did right by himself in the eyes of Kim. And I thought that was such a beautiful ending. I just said I wasn't going to spoil it, but I totally fucking did. And honestly, in his time in the prison, he even finds a home there. All the inmates fucking love him. He's like, oh, you're Saul Goodman. Oh, it's, and it leaves the future open-ended. Will Kim wait for him when he gets out? I think he got something like 30 years. Will Kim wait for him? I like to think so. And that, folks, is Better Call Saul. And also it zooms in. I hope you guys liked that part. Let's go ahead and move on to our last segment of the night, which is called Previously On. This is a new segment where I will recap everything you need to know before watching some movie or some show or playing some game. And this episode of Previously On is She-Hulk. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know, and I'm going to go through it fast. I'm going to get you all caught up so that y'all can start watching She-Hulk. The first episode came out last week. Let's talk about it. First things first, Bruce's origin. This is Bruce Banner. Way back when Bruce Banner was known as Edward Norton, Bruce was one of many scientists that were trying to recreate the super soldier program that gave the world Captain America in years past. Bruce's idea was to leverage gamma radiation to solve the problem, but after he was exposed to a lethal amount of it, a special gene he was born with causes his body to fuse with the right radiation and transform him into the Hulk for brief periods of time when he gets mad. After trashing the lab and killing some folks by accident, Bruce becomes a fugitive from the U.S. military and then goes on the run. So that all happens in The Incredible Hulk. More shit happens in the movie, but we don't fucking care about what happens in that movie because that's all. He's still on the run after the movie, so nobody fucking cares. All right. The Abomination. In The Incredible Hulk, the same movie, a special forces team whose task is to capture Bruce and bring him into custody is led by Emil Blonsky. After failing miserably to capture Bruce, Emil elects to be injected with a similar serum as Bruce and gains super strength, agility, and healing, but at the expense of suffering brain damage and vastly deteriorating judgment. After failing to capture Bruce a second time and getting his ass whooped, Emil happens upon Bruce's blood in a lab, and he injects it directly into his body, mutating him grotesquely into the Abomination pictured here. Eventually, he loses his fucking shit from the rampant and causes rampant damage from his brain and makes him just fucking lose his shit. And Hulk kicks his ass again, allowing the government to capture Emil, letting Hulk go free for some reason. We also see Abomination again in Shang-Chi with a hefty redesign matching closer to his comic book counterpart, and he is fighting our very own Wong from Doctor Strange in an underground fighting ring. Wong kicks his fucking ass. Yet another L for the big guy. But there aren't any hard feelings between the two as they both proceed through a magic portal to what looks like a metahuman prison cell. That is the last we see of him, but we will see him again in She-Hulk. Bruce becoming Professor Hulk. This occurs between the end of Infinity War and the beginning of Endgame. After leaving Asgard as it's being destroyed by Hela and Surtur, Bruce and the refugee Asgardians are intercepted by Thanos, who has 2 of the 6 Infinity Stones and is searching for the Tesseract, container of the Space Stone. After a very embarrassing ass-kicking from Thanos, Bruce's Hulk form refuses to come out, leaving Bruce in his defenseless human form for the entirety of Avengers Infinity War. It isn't until well after Thanos' snap, wiping away 50% of all life in the universe, that Bruce somehow comes to terms with the Hulk, and the two merge to become Professor Hulk, also known as Smart Hulk. He remains in this form even in She-Hulk. Let's talk about Natasha and Bruce's relationship. First, Natasha, aka Black Widow, and Bruce have a long history, with Natasha being the one who tracked Bruce down in Kolkata and convinces him to join the Avengers in the first Avengers Assemble movie. Bruce is very wary to be part of the team as the Hulk form because he's so dangerous, and even has an unfortunate incident with Natasha as he enters the Hulk form and chases her throughout the helicarrier. Later in Avengers Age of Ultron, Natasha becomes the only one that can talk Bruce down from his Hulk form in the form of a lullaby. The two develop a very deep connection from this, even bonding over the fact that neither of them are able to have children. They even entertain the idea of running away together, which is heartbreakingly lovely. In the end, Bruce decides that it's too dangerous for him to be on Earth, and that the Hulk cannot possibly be the hero that the people want because he can't control himself. So he leaves Earth in his Hulk form in the Quinjet and remains in that form for 3 whole years, losing touch with his humanity almost entirely. It isn't until Thor Ragnarok, when the Hulk listens to the last recording that he ever received from Natasha, that he's finally able to revert back to Bruce. After his run-in with Thanos, Heimdall is actually able to transport Hulk back to Earth just before he's killed by Thanos himself. Bruce's reunion with Natasha is brief, but it is touching, as Bruce warns his comrades of the coming of Thanos. Finally, years after Thanos' snap and half the universe is blown away, our heroes go on a time heist to retrieve the Infinity Stones and undo what Thanos has done. Unfortunately, in that quest, Natasha did not survive the trip back, and it utterly devastates Bruce when they all return to the present. Endgame. In Avengers Endgame, Bruce loses Natasha, the love of his life, Steve, aka Captain America, as he decides to live out his life in the past where he belongs, and finally his closest friend, Tony, who dies from snapping away Thanos and his forces with the Infinity Gauntlet. Another thing you need to know. The main thing you need to know about Daredevil is that, yes, this is the same Matt Murdock from the Netflix series Daredevil, albeit a potentially rebooted version, meaning any canon from that series may or may not hold up now that he's in the MCU. You really just need to know that he exists and that it's the same actor as in that previous show. He already made a cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home. It was very brief, so we really didn't get any kind of hint on what his backstory is, if any of it is canon. That said, there are other characters from the Daredevil series that are going to be reprised by the same actors, like Eldon Henson, who was Foggy, and Deborah Ann Wool, who was Karen. So yeah, just know that he's going to be in She-Hulk. The next 2 are speculation. They are not confirmed, but just know who they are just in case they do show up. Potentially, Kingpin could show up in the series. And I only say this because Kingpin was a key player in the Daredevil series. It's very much speculation. I don't know for sure that he's going to show up, but just know Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, is another prominent character in that show. And he's already made an appearance in last winter's Hawkeye. So just from that connection alone, he could make an appearance or at least be mentioned in She-Hulk, but we shall see. This is a total rumor. Please take it for a grain of fucking salt. But I heard a rumor that potentially The Thing, one of the members of Fantastic Four, aka Ben Grimm, could be making an appearance in the show. Totally a rumor. So just the grainiest of salt that you can possibly take here. But basically, Ben Grimm, famously known as The Thing, a member of the Fantastic Four, might be seeking out Jennifer Walters for legal counsel due to some legal trouble that he gets in. Again, this is a rumor. So, yeah, grain of salt, guys. And there you have it. Everything you need to know before watching She-Hulk. And that, folks, is Previously On. And that concludes our podcast tonight. Thank you all for watching the show. We will be on again next Wednesday, same time. Again, this is now a weekly podcast. So next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Twitch. Thank you all for tuning in. This episode will be released on all major podcast platforms on Friday morning. My name is Ngozi Mai. And this has been Did Y'all See That? I hope to see you next time. All right, y'all. Bye.